Hello, welcome to React 102. In this video, we'll be looking at how to build your first React component. But before we go ahead with that, we need to learn React Element and JSX. The React Element is a fundamental building block of React, representing a lightweight, plain JavaScript object that describes what should be rendered in the user interface. React elements are not actual DOM elements, but rather simple description of a component structure. They are created and used to construct the virtual DOM, which is then used to React to efficiently update the real DOM. Now, to achieve React element, you need to write JSX. That is the way you express or you write out your own React elements. So the React we are learning, as you guys know now, is Vite based, meaning we're going to be using Vite tooling to run our React application. Before I run this, I can run this so that you guys will look at the file structure that we have, and I can use this to explain the system. The first thing we see is node modules. This folder contains all the project dependencies which are installed using npm or yarn. npm is node package manager. So there are tools that you might need in your project that you can quickly bring in. When we are talking about npm or node as a different course, we are going to explain this part. So just know that whenever you see that folder in your project structure, it means node is installed. The next folder we have is public. This folder contains files that are meant to be publicly accessible and not processed by Vite. This can include your index.html, files like assets, images, fonts, static files that will not necessarily go through processing will sit in under public. So that's the best place for us to put our images. src. The source code of your React application is stored in this directory. The src directory typically contains any kind of folder structure that you want to deploy. There's no format in which your folder structure is going to be arranged. You can have your folder structure within your src the way you want it, and you see we were going to deploy ours when we do that. Vite.config.js. This is the configuration file for Vite. You can define various build options and settings for your project in the file. For React projects, you might specify settings like plugins and React related options here. Again, we're going to skip this one for now. By the time we get into the advanced topic, we'll come back to this section. The next, we have package.json. This is a file where you define your project's dependencies and scripts and other metadata information required by your project. This is essential for Node to run properly. Then you have package-lock.json. These files are generated when you install dependencies for your project. They ensure that the same version of dependencies are used across different development environments. You won't necessarily be working on package-lock.json. So the index.html, the first index file that we have in the root directory, is supposed to be an entry point into your React application. When we look at the source, we have several files here. We're going to clear all the files so that we'll be moving with a bare minimal, and that bare minimal is what we're going to start up with. I'm also going to remove the assets. I remove the style sheets that we have here and rename this to our style. Then I will only leave documents that are required by React.js so that I can explain this section. So the first file you're looking at is our entry point into the application, and there's nothing strange here other than the fact that we're having number 10 that says root. This root is an entry point in which your app is going to be mounted into it. So I'm going to rename this to ProcessGuy. So these are basic HTML, nothing is going on strange here. Look at this as our app.js, where we specify the JavaScript that runs the HTML page. That's what this main.jsx is all about. So if you go to this file, we are presented with this template that came with Vite. Line 1 talking about importing React, and because React is what you want to do, you're importing it because we need some of the elements to be able to render what it is we are doing. The next one is importing React DOM. and whatever we're doing, we're injecting it into the root element. Remember, get document by ID. So we're creating a DOM out of what is available in the index.html, and that's what we have here. And once we are done with that, we want to render this information inside that DOM that we are creating here. And what are we doing here? We are calling a React component that is called strict mode. We will learn more about this later. And then you are closing that strict mode requirement here, such that inside it you can then put in a tag. This can be a div, for example, and this is where you start building your app. So this is the structure you need to put to mind on how to start your React project. So starting from the index.html, you have this that looks like your normal HTML and JavaScript requirement. Instead of having apps.js here, you have main.jsx. And inside your main.jsx, you are going to create the DOM elements for the root. You're going to attach the root to the system so that you can render everything that you're going to be creating inside the root. That is the purpose of what this is doing. So let's even give it a test and run this project and see what we have. So we have our npm run dev, and we have it running at this IP. So let's go ahead and build ProcessGuy website using this approach. So let's link a style sheet to it so that we can start doing our design. So because my site will be using Bootstrap, I will just go to Bootstrap website to get the Bootstrap CSS. So I've just copied for Bootstrap, and you can see that the font is looking a little bit different. So now that we have our site defined and we can literally type something here and we see the results on the right hand side, what that means is we can go ahead and start designing our website. So let's go ahead and add more stuff to this. We have a file here which is our hero PNG. One of the things that Vite does for you is that whatever thing you put in your public, as part of the description we mentioned before, anything you put there, especially images, becomes available for you in the root directory. So you can actually call it by doing / your image, and that's how we were able to get that image to show there. We just finished designing the first section of the page, which is more like the banner section, and I will go to the bottom to define another section of the page. I could actually call this section, so I can come here and define another section, and I want to also make it fluid just to show that that is coming in nicely there, showing there. I want my container to be large. What will go in there should be large. Then I want to be able to make sure that my content will have a space above what is coming. That's my margin padding top. Okay, that's relatively okay. So let's define some comments. So I want to present like 4 boxes on the reason why, anybody looking at this site. So I'm designing 4 boxes. So each of the column have a class called box. So we can use CSS to take care of this. Let's do this in CSS. Introduce another section, and this section we just finished is having container fluid. You can go ahead and do the same thing here. Okay. Why don't these have going around? So let's bring it around. Let's find AG. Let's have something inside there. And somehow. So this is how our site is supposed to go, keep going continuously. Now let's come back to where we are. Now we've designed the site to a point whereby I think I'm comfortable that you understand what is going on in the main.jsx file. The next thing I want to do is to remove all the code I have here and abstract it inside another React component. And the reason for that is because main.jsx it's supposed to be an entry point into your React app. So therefore, I'm going to remove everything I've done and place it inside another React component. And that React component is going to be called App. That's going to be our first component we're going to be creating. To create a JSX React component app, you write app starting with a capital letter followed by the extension JSX. Then you can go ahead and write the syntax. The syntax is function, a JavaScript function, followed by the name of the component, which is app, because that's also the name of the file. It has to be the same thing like the name of the file. You're not passing any parameter in, and you have it here. This is very common. You are already familiar with this. However, what you will be returning is going to be a tag in this format. Open empty tag and close tag. So you don't need to write anything inside. Of course, you can specify that I want to return a div tag or anything in between, but I will just maintain this structure. So this is the tag that you are returning. Now, how does this app becomes available to other React components? The only way it becomes accessible is if you export it. So you come at the bottom of the file and you say export default, the name of the element, which is app. So what we are doing here is that we're exporting what it is that we've created as a function so that other tools can bring it in as an element, as a React element. So let's go ahead and see how we can bring this in as a React element. Mind you, we've not done anything here. Just for a show that is working, we can render a static text and say app component. Then we come here and make use of it. In order to make use of it here, you need to import it from wherever it is. We can see where it is here. We're in the same root directory. So we can say import app, that's the name you want to call it, from app.jsx. Notice the color differential. The color being gray means that you've not implemented it. You've not made use of it in your React page. So we'll come here and try to make use of it. So you can see that it's already available for you to consume. You type your app and you close it like this with a close tag. So you can't write any tags without closing it. So if you go to your app, you should be able to see that app rendering, the app content. The element is rendering there. You can see the app component. What that says in the essence is that we can actually have all these things we've written here. We can abstract it and put it inside app. I mentioned what the purpose of this page is for. The purpose of this page is an entry point for your application. So let's go ahead and remove everything we have here. And what are we doing? Why are we removing everything we have here? We're removing it so that we can have it inside this section. So this part is no longer needed and we can put it inside here. One of the requirements of having a React element is that your React element must have a root entry. What that means is you can't have multiple divs, or you can't have multiple entry, you can't have multiple parent elements. You have to have one parent element. As the case may be, this is our parent element here. This empty tag here is our parent element. So you can't have multiple, like having another one like this. So you can see the error that it will bring. So you have to have one entry point into your application. Now that that is done, what do you think will happen to our app? Our app is now will still work the way it is. It should. You can see that our app is still working the way it's supposed to work. But notice what happened to the main file. The main file is now more slimmer and we don't need to focus too much here. What this section is for you to abstract your app away from the main.jsx. Now that we're here, let's go ahead and start picking on the major fundamentals, the reason why we're here. There are other components that we can create. We can further divide this section into several sections and create components out of them, which we are going to do. And this is supposed to be an exercise for you to be able to flex your muscle and see that you get the understanding of what's going on here. So this is header section. So I'm going to create a component out of this. So this is our header section here. It starts here and it ends in this section. So you can abstract this away, create a React element in such a way that it's more presentable and is easy to reuse. Let's go ahead and do that. You need to decide what name you want to call it. The name I want to call this section is header, and that will be rightly placed inside our SRC. And you can have folder structure any which way you want. So again, remember the format, our capital letter, that's to start with capital letter, and you follow with return one single root. Because we're exporting it, we do export default header. So let's go ahead and copy all the value you have in this section. and we'll bring it inside header. So our header is well structured. We can then bring our header from where it is, which is in the same root directory, and bring it inside here. This is me not bringing it before using it, but I just want to bring it in and see what happens. Because Visual Studio is so smart, look at what it does. It brought it in for us, and it also wrote the code for us. So if you go to your program still works correctly. We are getting somewhere. So let's go to the next section that we have. You agree with me that the next section here looks like the body of the site. Like, this is like the content of the site. So let's go ahead and define another section, but this time around we call it body. So I come here and create body. So we come here and copy away all the content that we've identified to be the body, and we paste it inside here, so that from this section we can come here and do body. And VS Code is not bringing in our body, but that's fine, we can bring it in ourselves. So we type our body and we bring in our body there. So our app is still working the same way. And tell me if this is not cooler to read or easier to read. So you can see our main.jsx file looking simpler. Our app is looking simpler. Our body, well, maybe not too simpler, however, is being specific on what it is supposed to do, and that way it makes it easier to debug and also to follow through. The same thing with head. Head is just doing what it's supposed to do, the head of the section. Let's go ahead and see how we can reuse code, because the idea of all these stunts we are trying to pull out is to make sure we can reuse code. So let's go ahead and create folder. Let's work with folders this time around. And by the way, I want to be able to rewrite this section here. Notice the similarities, because when we are looking at components comes in where we have similarities. There's similarities between these 4 boxes. And what are their similarities? They have the same shape. What makes them different is the color and the text that is going on within them. We can actually do something about it. So I'll just create a new folder just for you to see how we can create components with folder involved. I'm going to call it Box.jsx. So let's now put in one of the boxes that we have there. So I can come in, I have this section, I will say box. And before your box can show, you have to import it. You can see it's not showing here. You have to import your box so that your box is usable. VS Code imported that box for us. So I just specify capital letter BOX, and then Visual Studio checked the entire system and know that it needed to go and pick it from component, that's comp that we created, and located the box we exported, and we're able to use it right here. Now the thing about this box is that we have it specified with some parameters, because it's possible that you want your component, and this is an example of such components. You want your component to be able to pass attributes. In React, we call them props. You want to be able to pass attributes into those parameters in such a way that you can specify different value. So what that means is that you should be able to say title is equal to job placement, and that should rendered here. And you should be able to specify other section. So if I come here now and do the same thing here, in this case, the title of this one is called over 100 videos. So if I go ahead and delete this, the next one we have is personal coach. That should be personal coaching. And the final one we have is internship. So of course, there's no way React is going to do all these things automatically. Look at the results that we have. The result we have is using job placement, support, everything. That's what is just putting in our results. And that is not strange because literally what we've been doing so far is just doing HTML. We've not done anything smart so far with what we have. We've not been able to pass something intelligent like we are trying to do now, because what we are trying to do now is a little bit in the next step, and that is being able to pass props or argument or attributes or value of attributes into our React element such that they will now display or they will change their action or behavior based on the value we pass to them. React component uses props to communicate with each other. Every parent component can pass some information to its child component by giving them props. Props might remind you of HTML attributes, but you can pass any JavaScript value through them, including object, array, and even also functions. Now, let's see how we can make this element smart and intelligent. Let's look at the elements we've created. And by default, you want to do something like this, whereby you can say box. We're already okay with this box rendering our HTML. And we've decided to use title to depict what the information should be. By the way, you can use something else. You can use text, you can use value, you can use head. Anything you like, you can specify this to be. I just specify title. Now that you specify that title is the property name, and as I've said, it's also called props. So in order to be able to make use of this parameter or attribute that you've called here, you need to define a props. And this can be anything, by the way. You don't need to call it props. You can call it argument or any other thing that you want. But because we are doing React, is props that is being called in React, and I'm gonna just follow the nomenclature that is being called. Now that you've defined these props, what that means is that whatever attribute that you pass here, let's say you even also have image, and this image is called job, and you also have another image, and this image is called online. And let's say for the other two, you didn't pass any image attribute to it. Now, because we've done these props here, this props now has those two attributes we've defined, and we can make use of them. Note their name that you use. In this case, we use title and img. So you can be able to pass, for example, here, you can pass props.img. You can do something like this. But because we're writing JavaScript, you need to let the system know that this section is a variable, is something you are bringing in from another part, is JavaScript. So how do you let it print out this information? Is by having this bracket inside. Anything that you have inside this bracket can be executed as JavaScript, while the other part will just be rendered as HTML. Now that being said, we can go ahead and do the same thing to the title section. So instead of having this static job placement support as static, you can have props.title. And if you save your information, look at what happens in the result. Automatically you have job placement support, over 100 videos, internship, personal coaching. Comes there automatically. That does the magic for you. And if you introduce new attributes in the future, those attributes becomes available inside the props, and you can make use of them within your code. And by the way, we can go ahead and start writing JavaScript stuff by doing something like this. You can go ahead and create constant variable. Now we're doing JavaScript, and say you have new title, and your old title or the title you are bringing from props is called title. Then I can plus it and say, so what you're trying to do is that whatever the user is bringing in, you want to change it and let it capture the new title here. So instead of me displaying props or title, I just display a new value. And what do I expect? I expect my exclamation mark at the end of each of the title there. So this is me using JavaScript to alter what it is that is coming in from our props. Of course, this is not what we want to see. The assignment I have for you guys is that you need to go and design your own site to this point. Notice I didn't do any complex thing on the site. I just make it very simple. Build your site to this level in such a way that you can bring in your first component, create your app component. Your app component is supposed to house every other component, and then turn every major thing on the site into a React component like I did here. I was able to bring in the header and the body. Within the body, I was able to create one component that did 4 jobs. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.